All right. I see people sharing in the chat where they're calling from. Oh, calling. Well, what is it these days? Logging in from. I don't know how we even state what we're doing anymore. Logging in, zooming in. Let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen again just to show everybody what the agenda is for tonight. Thank you for coming. And here we go. Share my screen really quick. Exit out of this full screen. We'll just keep it like this. So welcome. Thank you for being here. I'm going to just set the space really quick. So we're here because folks aren't getting their money from ODJFS, from the unemployment system. We are all in need right now. We're still in a pandemic. And no matter what the reports we're seeing, there's still people who are in need of their benefits or who haven't even gotten access to them. And I'm sure I'm preaching to the choir right now. So the important thing is, and I want to make sure that this is sharing. It says, oh, 1 second. It said that it paused, but let me make sure that this is up front. There we go. So I just want to set the space so that you know that this is a space for you to ask questions and to actually get answers. I know some folks submitted some questions and we'll answer them to the best of our ability. And yeah, some of the topics that we're going to be going over are overpayments and the state taxes that are on your benefits, and then also the rescue bill and federal relief. So after we go through that, we'll open up the space for the audience Q&A. So there's a Q&A button. There's a Q&A button in Zoom at the bottom, I believe, where you can like submit questions, or you can throw it in the chat. I'll be monitoring it. So either way works. And then let me introduce our panelists. So first, I'm going to introduce Michelle. And actually, I don't know if you would like to go in a little bit deeper. Hi, Michelle. Do you want to introduce yourself to everybody?
Hi, I'm Michelle Wrona Fox. I'm an attorney with Community Legal Aid.
And then thank you, Michelle. Next, Zach.
Hi, I'm Zach Schiller. I'm a research director at Policy Matters Ohio, and we're a think tank with offices in Cleveland and Columbus.
And now Tammy.
Hi, I'm Tammy Thomas Miles. I'm with Community Change. I'm located in Orlando, and I'm a senior organizer working on economic justice issues.
Thank you. So we're going to get into it. We're going to try to have this be a conversation. So please, if you have any questions, throw it in the chat and we will get to it. So first, I'm going to start with Michelle, and I'm also going to stop sharing my screen so that we can talk this out face to face. So one of the questions is, lots of people are shocked to find out that their unemployment benefits that they've received and spent on urgent needs were actually overpayments. So how does ODJFS collect overpayments, and what can people do to exercise their options when it comes to the overpayments?
Yes, there's obviously a lot of overpayments right now out there, and we've been hearing from a lot of people very concerned. So I'm going to give you an idea of how they collect. It's different in the state system from the federal system with the PUA benefits. Let's get started with the state system first. When you have an overpayment in the state system, they first determine whether it's considered a non-fraudulent or a fraudulent overpayment. Most of the overpayments are non-fraudulent, and what that simply means is that you didn't do anything intentional to receive these benefits. I'll give you a quick example. Say you're working and you reported your wages, you had to guess how much you worked that week, and you reported $90 and you really earned $100. So that would be an example of a non-fraudulent overpayment where they may ask you to pay back some money. I'll give you an idea of how long they can collect. So this is the type of overpayment that can only be collected for about 3 years. After the final decision, they have 3 years in which to collect, and we'll go through those means of how they collect. Once you hit that 3-year mark, your overpayment is going to be canceled with the Department of Jobs and Family Services. So this is not an overpayment that follows you forever. And I would definitely pay your rent, your shelter, your food before I would pay on this overpayment, because again, it's not something that follows you forever. But I do understand that people don't like a bill hanging over their head and they want to know what they can do. One of the major ways that an overpayment like this is collected is if you apply for benefits in the future. Over those next 3 years, they will take 100% of your benefits to pay back this overpayment. So if you go back to work and you're laid off and you qualify for benefits, and say you qualify for $300 a week, they're going to take all of that until your overpayment is fully paid back, and then you'll start to receive your weekly benefits. So that's one of the main ways that they collect on those overpayments. Another way is that you can make a payment arrangement with the Attorney General's office. You may get a letter from the Attorney General, which I know is pretty scary to get a letter from that office, but it's simply the office that collects overpayments for the Department of Jobs and Family Services. Sometimes they'll take as little as $50 a month, sometimes less, just a good faith effort on trying to pay this back. Again, after 3 years, what you can't pay back is going to be canceled. Another thing, on a non-fraudulent overpayment, they can take your state income tax refund, not the federal, but they can take the state. So that's the way in which they collect, and that will help you make some decisions. Now, if you're an individual that has something called a fraudulent overpayment, that's where the Department of Jobs and Family Services has determined that you might have done something intentional in their mind in order to receive benefits. That's a little different. That is allowed to be collected for 6 years and sometimes more. It's not like the non-fraudulent that you hear about mostly right now. So they can go a little longer with collection. Another thing they can do is they can give you penalty weeks. So if you apply in the future, like I had said a few minutes ago, even if you qualify, you may not be able to get those benefits for a little bit of time. And that would be in the notice. It would let you know. And then you can end up paying back up to 25% more benefits than you actually received. So that's how they can do some collecting. Again, when you actually can receive benefits again, they're going to offset you 100% until that amount is paid back. Not only can they take the state income tax, but they can take the federal. So that's, a lot more devastating for people. The Attorney General's office will again take payment arrangements. And at the end of that 6 years, they may cancel out that overpayment. However, they can, if they want to, file in common pleas court to continue collecting past that period of time. So if you have an overpayment in the state system, those are the different ways they look at it and the different ways that they collect. If you are in the PUA system, that's the federal system for independent contractors, gig workers, people who couldn't meet the monetary requirements for the state system, they collect their overpayments a little different. They will take 1/2 of your weekly benefit amount. So say you have this overpayment and you're getting $300 a week, they're going to take $150 until that overpayment is paid back. Right now, there isn't any system set up or in place to take your state or income tax refunds. So they have not been doing that. That could happen in the future, but it's not happening right now. Typically, if you're getting that extra benefit amount, the $300 a week, it was $600 over the summer, they usually don't take from that. But it's possible. We have seen where they can. They shouldn't, but they shouldn't take that. So those are the different ways that they can collect, and that should help you make some decisions.
Thanks, Michelle. And a follow-up to that would be, can these overpayments be waived? And if they're non-fraudulent, especially if folks know that they're going to want their benefits later down the line, how can they, one, possibly waive them, or just continue getting their benefits if they don't have the money to pay off these overpayments?
Okay, so again, I'm going to break this up and the difference between the state and the federal programs. With the state system, anytime something is an agency error or an employer report error, such as the agency said you qualified and you really didn't, or they gave you an amount that you shouldn't have received because they made an error, it's always been allowed that those types of overpayments can be canceled. The best way to do that is through the appeals process. So if you get a notice that you have an overpayment, you can appeal within 21 days. Ohio doesn't really have a formal waiver process like some other states. The agency is going to develop this process because they realize that there's been a lot of overpayments. And so they want to develop that. But in the meantime, we have no choice but to go through the appeals process. If you're a little late in the appeals process, I would suggest that you still file. Otherwise, you may not be considered. I would also, watch the news, watch the media, watch the website for when they develop the waiver process so you can get in at that means. If you've been referred to the Attorney General's office, you can ask them about the waiver. And then if you're in the federal system for PUA, you may have been told early 2020 to late 2020 that you have this overpayment. It was the agency's fault and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, that's changed. So as of the law that passed on December 27th, there now is a provision to waive those overpayments if, one, it was not your fault, and two, it's against equity and good conscience. And what that basically means is it's not fair and you can't afford to pay it back. Again, the best way right now is to go through the appeals process. People do get those notices with those large overpayments. Please appeal it, even if it's just to ask for a waiver. And then when the agency has its formal waiver process together, then you can go through that.
Thank you. And we actually have a question in the chat, and just to keep up the conversation, I'm just going to read it now. So this is from KM Adams. What happens if I'm a victim of fraud and end up with an overpayment? Do I have to appeal?
Okay. Hi, Kim. Good question. I haven't quite seen overpayments due to the fraud so far, but you should report fraud on the portal because that can affect other public benefits you may have received during this pandemic. And when you report it on the portal, you're going to get proof that you reported it, and you can present it to the other agencies if they say that you have any overpayments, if they stop other things like food stamps, or they tell you, you have to pay stuff back. So I would definitely keep that. But if you have an overpayment in the system, never be afraid to ask for a waiver.
Thank you, Michelle. And we'll have more space towards the end to have it where you can actually speak out your question and go off mute. I hope I put the right settings for that. All right, so let's go on to Zach to talk about our favorite subject. Don't we love this time of year? Taxes. So tax season is coming up. And Zach, what do people who have been on unemployment over the last year need to know about taxes? And how about and what should they know if they're still collecting benefits now?
Well, if you got unemployment benefits, you have to pay both federal and state income tax on them. And the state does have a system where they do ask you if you want to have the federal income tax, or at least a flat amount of that, withheld. And some people do that, some don't. I think about half of the claimants decide that they want to have it withheld. Obviously, some people don't feel they're in a position to have that done and are, able or will have to pay it later. The state, however, does not allow that for the state income tax. So in other words, there are a lot of folks who are going to wake up, if they haven't already, if you're dealing with your taxes, and you're going to discover that you owe state income tax on these unemployment benefits. And given that we had a lot of people getting significant benefits last year, we had $15 billion paid out in unemployment insurance in Ohio last year. So you can see that state income tax on that, there was one estimate already that was, I think, something like $91 million that may be paid in state income tax on that. So that's a lot of money. We have been trying to talk with state legislators about reducing or eliminating these payments because some states don't tax unemployment benefits. And in fact, some of them have just in the past few weeks been moving in that direction. Arkansas, to cite one example, which is kind of interesting because it was a bipartisan effort that got overwhelming approval in Arkansas to not have to pay state income tax on unemployment benefits last year and this year. So we're certainly working on that here in Ohio. The thing is that, as you all, I'm sure, realize, this is a benefit cut. Unemployment benefits were not taxed during the first 40 years of the system from the 1930s until the late 1970s. Only then did that begin. And ironically, it was during a period where President Carter wanted to show that he had a balanced budget. So it was the same kind of stuff like we're hearing today. Oh, we've got to find a way to pay for it. So it was unfortunate that happened. But taxing unemployment benefits really undercuts the two main purposes of the unemployment program, which are to support families when they need it and to maintain purchasing power so that not only do families have enough to put food on the table and put gas in the car or keep your internet going, but also it's a major factor in allowing the economy to not go into the kind of dive that it otherwise would. And we saw that in a really big way this past year. We did not see, as bad as things were, and as much as there's been an enormous amount of suffering and pain, the overall economy did not continue in the same kind of dive that it had last spring. And a big chunk of that was these unemployment payments that went to people, the $600 a week in particular. So we have some hope that legislators will vote to waive the penalties and the interest that you otherwise would have to pay if you don't pay tax on your unemployment. We're working on that right now. We don't know if they'll do so. We certainly encourage you to call your state legislators and encourage them to do that. We also are hoping that they will at least allow people to have the choice to decide to have that tax withheld, which of course, you may feel that you want to do that or you may not, but you should have that opportunity just as you do with the federal tax. And I think that there's a good chance that we'll get that passed. I've had conversations with legislators on both sides of the aisle, and I don't know how soon it'll happen, but I think most of them agree. Why shouldn't people have that choice? Of course, what we most want is to simply end the tax on unemployment benefits, which, as we've said, doesn't make a lot of sense. There is some legislation in Congress to do that. I don't know if it's going to go anywhere quickly, but or at least to reduce the amount that you'd have to pay it on last year. So maybe we'll see that, maybe we won't. I think one of the other interesting elements of this is that, as some people I think are even asking here in today, but also as we've heard in the last month or two, we've had these criminal gangs trying to take advantage of the unemployment system and leading to people who haven't gotten unemployment receiving 1099 statements as if they've gotten benefits and that they have to pay taxes on it, which is, bewildering at a minimum, and creates a lot of headache for people. Well, if we didn't have tax on unemployment benefits, this would not be a problem. So this is getting a lot of attention these days, and it's just one other side benefit we'd see if we got rid of that. So while we may not see that in the near future, I do want to mention one other thing, which isn't directly on unemployment, but which some of the folks on the call may also find of interest. Some of you may qualify for or file for the federal earned income tax credit. And one of the things that we saw in the most recent bill that Congress passed was that they're going to allow for people who qualified for the federal earned income tax credit in 2019 to use what they earned in 2019. If you were unemployed in 2020 and so you didn't earn much or you didn't have a job, but you were working in 2019, you can use your 2019 earnings to qualify for your EITC this year. And that could be very helpful. And people should realize that when you're filling out your taxes, not only do you have to pay the unemployment, the tax on the unemployment, you do have the opportunity perhaps to qualify where you might not otherwise for the earned income tax credit. And there's an effort to do that at the state level as well, which I think should be approved shortly. So I think maybe that's a good segue into what Tammy wants to talk about, because that's a federal issue, but take it away.
Thanks, Zach. Tammy, you want to get into it about the rescue, relief, and recovery?
Yes, thank you. It's so good to be with fellow Ohioans. Ohio is my home. Can I have some slides? Because I figure like if we give folks a lot of data, it's always, for me, it's easier to see it sometimes on paper. So if you could load the slides, please. So we have gone through this process. We're in this process of reconciliation. So this American Rescue Package plan that has $1.9 trillion in it has gone through the House, and they have actually passed it on to the Senate. And what they passed on is very similar to Biden's original plan. So what's included is a one-time payment of $1,500. Added to the $600 would give us $2,000. $75,000 for individuals and $150,000 for a couple. Housing assistance that includes rental, homeowners protection, eviction moratoriums, utility assistance, $40 billion for child care that will go to centers, but also help increase access to families for child care, increase supplemental unemployment. That's the PUA or the pandemic unemployment. Before we were getting $600 a week. Initially, it was proposed at $300. They've taken it up to $400, and they're extending it out until August. However, I-10 filers are not included. And I-10 filers are folks who may be immigrants, but they don't have a Social Security number. And they're working, they're paying taxes, but they are not qualifying. And can you go back one, please? They're not qualifying at the moment. And then, as Zach mentioned too, they're also enhancing the EITC and the child tax credit. So some of these credits, the amount that has been proposed is not quite double, but it's a pretty significant amount, particularly with EITC. They're looking at raising the EITC and extending it to childless adults. So folks from 19 who are full-time students, if this passes, they could qualify, and all the way up to 64. And then for the child tax credit, there's another one called the child independent tax credit. But for the child tax credit, a family would increase from $2,000 to $3,000 per child, and $3,600 for kids that are under 6. It only extends to children up to 17 years of age. So this could be a significant amount of money that could come back into families' pockets. You can go to the next slide, please. And then here, the other thing that's in this is $350 billion to state and local governments. Some of the things that Steve laid out that's actually happening in the state. We all know that if the states aren't getting money from the federal government, like they're going to continue to suffer budget-wise. There's less revenue coming into the states than there were pre-COVID. And getting money into state and local municipalities is like uber important. There's a 15% increase on SNAP benefits through the end of September. Improvements to healthcare, which includes improvements to FMAP. It's an incentive. It's a 5% increase in FMAP and using Medicaid, and it's an incentive to actually increase Medicaid expansion, but also for states who have not expanded Medicaid, it can be an incentive for them. Unfortunately, Ohio has, but it would definitely give the Medicaid program a boost. It also includes covering the cost of access to vaccines, testing, and treatment. So there's dollars in there for distribution and attainment of vaccines, and also covering the cost, like if I was to get sick and I needed treatment, and that can be covered under Medicaid. And then there's also the $15 minimum wage increase and paid leave. There's a reimbursement companies who are willing to give their workers paid leave. You can go to the next slide. Now, I just want to remind you that this is, right now, this is passed out of the House. It's in the Senate. And it's the Senate's job to actually mark things up, make their negotiations. After they're done with that, they'll put together a package and pass that package back to the House. Or they could agree with what's here. What we're hearing is, you know, with Senate being, with some of the folks in the Senate being who they are, that they're not in agreement. So some of the things that we're hearing that they're pushing back on, they've already pretty much eliminated immigrant inclusion. So folks who are not full citizens and have immigrant status, not being included in the majority of these things. So we think that they should include immigrants, particularly in any federal relief stimulus money. And that includes the EITC and the child care tax credit, especially since most of these folks are already paying taxes. We're also hearing that there is some pushback around the amount of the payments for unemployment insurance a week, that they want to keep it at the $300 level. We need to ensure that they keep it, that they raise it to $400 at least. They should take it back up to $600 like it was under the CARES Act, truth be told. But 400 is better than 300. And like Zach brought up this thing about taxing pandemic unemployment, like we're also saying that the federal government needs to make sure in this legislation that comes out that no one pays taxes on federal benefits for unemployment for the duration of the crisis and for like 2020. We believe that is incredibly, incredibly unfair. We also think that the Senate must keep the $350 billion in state and local aid. So one of the other things we're hearing is that they're pushing back on that amount. They like to lower it because many of them believe that states and localities don't really need that money. And that's untrue. If you look at, I think there's a discrepancy because the budgets aren't quite as low as some folks estimated they would be, but that doesn't mean that states and localities aren't struggling. And I would imagine, Michelle talked about a waiver for reclaiming overpayment. Like, where does that money go back to? How does that money get covered? How does the state get money to actually expand childcare centers? Childcare is a huge issue. How do they cover PPE? Or how do they have opportunities to give more loans for small businesses, particularly in Black and brown and poor communities? I think that the money that's needed to come down from the state level has to stay at a minimum $350 billion, and it cannot be reduced. And then we're also hearing that minimum wage is a big stickler in this. The House decided to leave it in because they believe that like it's something that's very important. We're hearing that the Senate will most likely pull it out. And if they do, we're not clear what's going to happen. It could be something that becomes a standalone bill. There's just no guarantee. But we believe that they need to leave the $15 minimum wage in, and that they need to make sure that tip workers and people with disabilities are included in minimum wage. And so what we're what we're saying, asking people to do mainly is like reach out to your members of Senate. They need to hear from us. So many of these folks are out of touch. They don't understand what it's like to go without a paycheck, or have to stand in a food line, or to worry about having to pay your rent. They need to hear our voices, and they need to hear from their constituents. And I will turn it back over to Kalia unless there's any questions or comments.
Thank you, Tammy. I think that it's time. If nobody else has any comments or questions specifically about that, let's just get into the Q&A portion. So I have a couple of questions that were submitted, and then we have some in the chat. But I think we'll start with the ones that are in the chat since y'all are here. I also see somebody has their hand up. Would you like to talk? I can unmute you right now if you would like to ask your question directly. Tim, hey Tim. I just, you can pop off mute if you're ready.
Sorry about that. Am I good now?
Yep, you're good.
Wonderful. Long time no see, but Monday I got an email from you and I thought, ooh, this is ironic that she would send me this. And I'm going to tell you my situation. I ended up, and I didn't know about this because I'd gotten nothing from the state to tell me. I'm one of those people that got overpaid to the tune of $9,005. Because of being in the group this summer and the advice of one of the folks that you had to say, I would be careful about what I spent of that money because eventually they're going to find the error. So bottom line is, my wife and I, we've got that $9,005. As the last time that I filed unemployment was November 14th, the week ended November 14th. I ended up getting to be as a longtime sub at one of the local schools. At that time, the principal said I was still an independent contractor. However, the people in the office, the administrative, said that I was an employee. So I have not filed anything since the week of November 14th when that week ended, because they had me as I would start November 16th that Monday. And again, I didn't find out anything about this until I got a thing to tell you, go into your whatever, that I had the ability to file 11 more weeks, but they had fixed the amount. And then it also said overpayment balance, $9,005. Here's the problem. We've already filed our taxes, and the 1099 has the total amount on it. So we filed the taxes and did all of that. And so I don't know what the hell to do here. Should I pay them that $9,005? Should I do what Michelle said? Can I do something like that to where I put it in, the I can't think of the word.
The waiver?
Yeah, where you go into that to where I say, look, you overpaid me. I didn't do anything wrong. This is your fault. In fact, I've been trying to get a hold of them for 3 or 4 weeks, and I can't stay on the phone for an hour or 2 hours waiting. Tried to call the Attorney General's office because supposedly if you don't do something about this within 60 days, they send it to the Attorney General's office. Big scare. And I've tried to call them. And I can't get a hold of anybody. And one more thing, and then I think I've ran the gamut. The person that did our taxes said that he thought that they were going to have, there was a bill up toward the middle of March that would take like $10,000. Now, if this isn't true, this is, and I don't know exactly what it is. The bill thing is, and what he ended up doing, he hasn't filed our numbers yet. He's just given us a total, and he hasn't filed the numbers because of waiting to see if we can get this with the unemployment fixed. Plus, there's supposed to be a bill that will freeze $10,000. Have you heard anything about that? or anything of that sort for people that have drawn unemployment, that will be like scrubbed. That
Let me answer that, and then I'm sure Michelle can much better answer the issue about the overpayments. But on the tax issue, I think what your account is probably referring to is a bill that's in Congress that says that $10,200 of unemployment benefits last year would not be subject to federal tax. However, that bill has not passed. And so I don't think you should count on that.
Right.
That could happen, but for now, it's not the law. And I wouldn't assume that that's going to just go away.
Mm-hmm. And should I go ahead and give them that money? Should I just put it through an appeal and say, you guys screwed up. This is your fault. I'll do my best to pay you what I can pay you, even though technically Amy and I, we've got the money because once I heard that, we were very watchful about what we spent so that there would be money in case they caught the error.
What I would tell you first about your taxes is that you will pay taxes on the money you received in the year you received it. So even if they decide to waive this overpayment, that wouldn't happen till 2021. And there's certain credits that you would get at that point. So I don't know that you need to hold up filing your taxes. If this is something that you feel was the agency error, then you can go through the appeals process and ask that it be waived. If they decide not to waive it, then you can make the decision as to whether you want to make payment arrangements, if you want to pay it back in full. That part's a personal choice, but you do have the right to go through the process to have it waived first and then make a determination after that.
Okay. Because now that would mean that my wife and I would have, quote, made $9,500 less money last year. We would also need to amend our tax return, or should we just go ahead and let Tracy file the thing and then after the fact it gets amended, or what?
My understanding is that your tax preparer in 2021 will take care of that situation. There's certain credits that you can get. I'm not a tax specialist, but I work with one, and that has been her advice.
Okay, now if I would decide to do the appeal, who would I contact, and can I contact these people? Because it seems like I can't contact anybody, or what the unemployment, what the JFS did. I had sent, the one operator gave me an email to send a letter to. I ended up having to send it twice. Then they sent me a form back saying, well, can you tell us what your problem is and all this? And I told him on the thing. And he had mentioned something about, going through an appeal process too. But I want to make sure I've got the right information and what to what I could do before I do it,
Yeah, Michelle, could you break it down into the 3 key steps that people need to know in order to file the appeal process?
Yes.
So this is being recorded.
Okay. So the first thing I would do is look for the notice that actually said you were overpaid. And then that notice, whether it's state or federal, has an appeal process. And then I would follow that appeal process. Even if it's late, go ahead and follow that appeal process. It's a little different from the state to the federal. And those notices have the different either emails or mail addresses that you would need to file. So that's probably, I guess, the most general way I could break it down. And then know that this appeal process is taking many, many, many months. The other thing is to watch the website, because they are going to make a formal waiver process and you can participate in that.
Okay. All right.
All right, thank you, Tim. And
Thank
this
you.
is being recorded too, so it's being posted on the Ohio Organizing Collaborative page, but I'll repost it in the Unemployed Action Ohio Facebook group. So I just dropped a link and I will drop it again where it has a couple of different resources. We'll also be doing testimonials. So we're doing a testimonial workshop for folks to write out their experiences with the system, because there is a Unemployment Modernization Council that's their whole job is to improve the system. But unfortunately, there's nobody who's actually been impacted by the unemployment system on that council. So the best way for us to actually improve it so that it's actually something that claimants can use and it's more friendly for you all as the users, we need to share your experience with this council, because they're upgrading to a different IT system. So I can explain more of that at the meeting tomorrow, and that will be ongoing on Thursdays. But I do want to pull some other questions from the chat. So I see, does anybody else want to raise their hand if you know how to do it? Here's a shorter question, which I believe you just answered. Who would we call for the waiver for overpayments with PUA? And then I see Karen Ellenwood. You said, or I don't know if you'd like to speak it. I can read it for you. I spoke with a representative with ODJFS today regarding a payment I was supposed to receive on 2/11/21. I received an email stating that the direct payment was denied because of my direct deposit. I entered my bank information, but I still haven't received my money. I spoke with ODJFS today and was told I didn't receive the payment because of my overpayment. I know that the amount I was supposed to receive overpayment was deducted from that amount. I don't know if you need more clarification to answer that, or if you would like to speak. Okay, awesome. Yes. Okay, I'm gonna have to make you a panelist, but you should be able to talk now. You are muted.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So yes, I talked to the representative today. He was telling me that I didn't receive the payment because of an overpayment, but it was for like 3 different weeks. And each week I could see where they deducted my overpayment. So I'm thinking that somebody at Job and Family didn't go back in and do their part, because I received a payment yesterday. So one payment I got, the other payment I didn't. He said they can decide to keep half of it or they can decide to keep all of it. So I don't know which way to go. I asked to speak to a supervisor, but I wasn't given that option.
Can I ask if you're in the PUA system?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so unusual things like that seem to happen in the PUA system. Typically, you would get an overpayment notice that you would have the opportunity to appeal. In some ways, they can do a collection during that, but you would actually have it spelled out in a notice. The PUA system doesn't do a good job of that. And if you do go back through, sometimes it's not on that first page of a notice you would receive, it's on a second page, and it's kind of hidden. You can file an appeal if you disagree with it. You might want to contact a local legal aid to review the situation, because the PUA is new, different, and it just doesn't function as well.
Okay.
And so it might be better for someone to individually review that situation.
Okay. All right. So I guess as far as legal aid, I know most times you need to be income qualified. Is that the same way with that?
Yes. So most legal aids are 200% of the poverty level. That's about $50,000 for a family of 4.
Okay, that's not going to work for me. I'm a single person, so that won't work. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Karen. And also, like I said, we will be having these testimonial workshops. So we will have like space for, asking more questions like these and figuring out how we can actually like tell your story to improve the system. Thank you. So next I'm going to read Daniel's question. And if you want to get ready, just in case if you want to speak it, I asked that if everybody could keep their questions to a minute and a half, so that we have time to answer them because we're running low on time. So Dan, I was a victim of identity theft for UI benefits 2 days before my layoff last week. Oh, I'm sorry. I reported the fraud and was told that they will need to verify things before they can start my new unemployment account. How long approximately will this take, and will I be paid retroactively once it's in place?
I wanted to, before I address this, give people another option. If they can't qualify for legal aid, if they look at their county bar association, oftentimes they'll have a referral board for unemployment or different areas of law, and they may charge a flat rate. So like I know in our county, you can pay $50 for an hour consultation or 30-minute consultation, and then that could help you. So that might help people who don't qualify for our services. But when it comes to I'm currently working on a case just like yours, Daniel, where someone had committed fraud under their social security number, and now they need to claim. I would say definitely be persistent. I would say if you qualify for our services, which it sounds like you may, because of your income, that you contact a legal aid, because I'm having to go through a supervisor myself in order to untangle a person from this same mess. I would say definitely be persistent, because we had someone back over the summer when maybe it wasn't as understood what was happening, and they were kind of treated a little bit like the criminal themselves. The agency just wasn't getting that they needed to file. So, they definitely have a way of freezing fraudulent accounts. And then you may, open an account, and definitely have to prove your identity.
Daniel,
However-
do you have any questions, or does that help? Do you want
Well,
to?
one other thing to answer one other point. Hopefully you will finally get your benefits, and when you do, they should be retroactive.
Okay. Unfortunately, I missed a lot of what she said earlier because when you unmuted me, it stopped the sound on my computer. I don't know why that happened, but anyway, it's back on now. In general, well, my question mostly is, they told me that they would get back with me, and I don't know how long that might take and how long should I wait. When I called in, it took at least an hour to get a hold of someone, and I've done that twice. So I don't know how long I should wait before trying to contact them again. The last time I talked to them, I believe, was Monday. And so it's been 2 more days. I mean, do you think it'll take a week, or before they, one thing I heard her say was like it's kind of treating you like the criminal, where she didn't treat me like the criminal, but she did imply that they have to figure out which information is correct, the one that they had initially, which is not, or the information that I gave them on when I called in, and most of it matched. They had a lot of the same, they had some of the same information, but there was at least one piece of information that was different. So I'm not sure. Well, for one thing, my driver's license was different. So I don't know how long it'll take them to sort that out, or if they're going to contact me to provide more information. Because she told me there was nothing for me to do at this time, but that was 2 days ago.
Right. It could take a while, but what I'm going to suggest is that you and I don't know if you've done this, but you take a picture of your ID next to your face, and that has helped people prove their identity. in a way that's sufficient to unemployment. And they are going to sort of have to untangle you from this fraudulent claim. They do have ways of freezing it. I would probably call them weekly. I would not wait for them to get back to you because there's just so many people, you don't want to get lost in the shuffle. You probably will have to provide a lot of verification. You might have to do it more than once, unfortunately. And if you have you qualify for legal aid, reach out to legal aid. I have a case like this myself I'm having to go through a supervisor with, so.
Thank you, Michelle, and thank you, Daniel. And I will be reposting this live, so that I'm going to drop another link before the end. We have 2 more questions, though, and I want to make sure that we have time for that. Thank you again, Daniel. So I am going to, is it Catlin? Catlin? Oh, hold on. I lost your question, but if you want to raise your hand, I can like allow you to speak. Awesome.
Hi there, thank you so much. It's Caitlin, but I will also answer to anything. And I'm happy that you're able to just take my question. So,
Hey, Caitlin, could you actually come a little bit closer to your mic? You sound a little like you're far away.
muffled. Is this better?
Does that sound good for everybody else? Can everybody else hear? Okay.
Is that
Yes.
better? I'll try to project too. This is like something weird with this mic, and I'm a soft talker. So this might not be quite the right forum for this. I totally understand if that's the case. I've just like not been able to find anything to help me. So I'm hoping that one of you might have some info, or some maybe some other folks that I could reach out to resources. So I applied for unemployment, was waiting, thought that they were processing it, but it turned out that they had not even sent it to processing. There was like a month that went by. I was like filling out my claims. They were waiting for information from my employer, that I was able to give them in a matter of like 5 minutes. So I'm not sure why they didn't like 1 or 2 or 3 weeks ago ask me for that. So now it's taking me twice as long to get this, and I was kind of prepared to wait about a month or so, but not to wait twice as long. And I'm on SNAP, I'm on Medicaid, I'm on PIP, but like I don't have any way to pay my bills, and I'm trying to figure out if there's any assistance available anywhere to help me while I wait, or if there are ways to expedite, or if you know anything about that. So yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, so that actually is the situation most people are going through at the beginning of their claim. And what we suggest people do is call 211. When you call 211, you'll give them your zip code and tell them what you need, and they'll let you know what resources are available in your area. A lot of United Ways have money to help people through whatever your situation may be, whether it's getting something extra from food banks, paper products, some cash assistance for medical costs and utilities. So I would call 211.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's exactly. Thank you. I really appreciate you all. Stay safe.
I just dropped that in the chat. Is there anything else, Caitlin? And I only said Catlin because I was thinking of Game of Thrones. I don't know if anybody else on here watches that, but I was thinking Catlin. But Caitlin, any other questions? Does that help?
No, that's super helpful. That's it. That's super. So hopefully, yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. And then we have one more question, and I don't know if you would like to speak, KM Adams, but this is a great question. If you would, please raise your hand. But their question is, if I don't have internet, can I file for state or PUA benefits via phone?
Yes, you can file by telephone. Unfortunately, expect to wait a long time. You can file, you can send in documents by mail. It's difficult, but at least you can get that application going. There are different agencies you may have to look around, or the library systems, to upload documents that are needed. Again, I always say contact your local legal aid if you need help, but state and federal both have the ability to file by phone.
Okay, and then I don't know also if there's any resources for internet that y'all might know of, or other than like the library, but that could also be an option of going there to file so that you aren't waiting as long. All right, so, oh wow, perfect timing. We have 1 minute left, so if we go over one, I apologize, but I do think that this is very important so that we can go over some next steps. So I know Tammy has a texting party that she has to get to at 6, so she might hop off a little bit early. Tammy, I don't know if you have a link to that, if you want to drop it. It's a texting part, and if you want to say anything about it.
Sorry, I'm always struggling to get off mute. We're actually texting members of the Senate about passing the 1.9 trillion federal relief. And we're texting our friends and families to not only share their stories, but also to ask them to contact members of the Senate to pass the relief as it is.
Thank you. And so if you would like to attend that, I see someone just dropped something in the chat. Okay. The other thing is I will drop this other link for the link tree. A link tree is basically a link that takes you to a bunch of other links. And this is the one for Unemployed Action Ohio. So it has the RSVP for, if you just copy and paste that into your browser, it should work. It has the link to our Facebook group where you can join it. And it also has a link to the registration for our testimonial workshops that I'll be doing. So I will see you there. They'll be on Thursdays at noon. So bring your lunch because I'll probably be eating, and bring your stories so that we can get them heard and change the system because we need our relief. So is there any other things that we want to say just to close out? Any final next steps? Oh,
I just
and we'll be
wanted to
having some
mention-
type of, oh, go ahead, Zach. What were you about to say?
I'm sure Kalia will tell you this if you participate in her group, but this group, the Unemployment Compensation Modernization and Improvement Council, is meeting almost weekly. It's a group of legislators and others that are supposed to be coming up with recommendations to improve the process so that not as many people go through the kinds of problems that we've just been hearing about. And so it's really important that people get to them and tell them the kind of experiences that they've had so they don't have to be repeated. And so they're meeting, well, like tomorrow at 2 and most Thursdays at 2 o'clock, and they're going to have public testimony on April 22nd and April 29th. And I'm sure that you can link up with Kalia and work with her and hopefully participate in that so that they hear from the people who are actually affected, not just from everyone else who isn't.
And I will be going down to the State House on the 29th of April, which is one of the days that they're accepting public testimony. So if anybody's down, I can like provide gas cards. If you are in Columbus, that'd be a great way of showing up and giving your testimony. The other thing is on Monday is International Women's Day, and I will be sending out a follow-up email with a small toolkit with some actions you can do of calling the senators, sending a letter, and just sharing it on social media so that, because like you heard from Tammy, this rescue bill has so much more than just unemployment, but also unemployment expires in 2 weeks. So we got to get this moving. So, all righty then. Oh, and that's what's your $1,400 stimulus checks are in. So as soon as this gets passed, then we all get a check. So.
And just
right.
one more thing, Claire, if it doesn't pass by the 14th, then there's going to be a gap in unemployment. Like if they don't get it signed by the 14th, there will definitely be a gap.
Yeah, so come tomorrow. We'll be having them every Thursday leading up to these deadlines. And thank you so much for coming. And I hope to see y'all soon. And let's get this money. All right. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks very much.
Right.